Sometimes you may need to use a large amount of data in AutoCAD, but to expect your users to enter each item one by one is a bit of a stretch. So one thing we can do is connect with Microsoft Excel. So in Excel, you can have all your information, you can import it using Visual Studio, and then you can use it in the AutoCAD environment. This is exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to create two main commands. The first one, draw excavation, which will take information from an Excel file and then draw a polyline representing an excavation in AutoCAD. The next main command that we're going to do is generate report, which will scan the AutoCAD environment for all polylines and for circles, and then we'll create a report in Excel. Now, in order to create those two functions, we're going to need some helper functions. The first one is to select an Excel file. The next one is to get a directory to save an Excel file. The next helper function is read Excel data. So once we identify our Excel file, we need to read the information that is inside this file. And the next two helper functions are functions that we already created before, prompt, insertion, point, and cat. And the next one is to create a polyline, which we have previously done. Now, in order to get started, we're going to open Visual Studio, create a new project, and use our previous template. We're going to call CAD project Excel and create. After we have launched our project, the next step is to enable the Excel library. And the way we do that is with the dependencies, add project reference, and then over here in the COM tab, here it is, Microsoft Excel 16.0 library, and hit OK. And now we should have all the libraries in order to connect to Microsoft Excel. Now, one thing I need to add also for this to work is imports Excel, this line over here, and this will tell it to use the Excel library. Now let's start importing our helper functions. So the first one is to select an Excel file. Very simple. This is all it does. It just creates a dialog box and you can select your Excel file. The next helper function saves an Excel file in a certain location. So it will ask you where you want to save your Excel file and it will save it there for you. We will add this helper function. Now the next helper function is read Excel data. What it will do, you have your Excel file, with different cells. So you have information, let's say here, here, here. What it will do is it will read this information and then you can use it any way you want to. So I will import this function. The next function is to prompt an insertion point in CAD. So let's say this is your CAD environment, and then it will ask you for a point, and then you can use this point however you want. You want to insert your data according to this point. So now let's import this function. Now the next helper function is to create a polyline. Now the way this works is you will add your points. So it takes in the vertices of the polyline, and then it also takes in the radiuses, and what it will do is it will link these points together to create a polyline. Then it will apply a fillet depending on the radiuses that you gave it, and if you just give it zeros, then it won't create any fillet. Now I will add this helper function. Now that I added all my helper functions, now it's time to create our main command. So the first one is draw excavation. So the way this main command works is it will take information from an Excel file. So in cell B1, it will take the top radius. From cell B2, it will take the bottom radius, and in cell B3, it will take the height. And what it will do is it will create a cross-section of an excavation. something like this, where you'll have your top radius and then your bottom radius and then the height. So now let's copy this main command. So now that we added this command, let's do a test and see how it works. So I'm going to launch. Okay, now that we've launched AutoCAD, we need to net load our DLL. So I'll type net load, then I will load our DLL file. Open, always load. Now let's test it out. The command is draw excavation. Okay, now it's asking me for an Excel file. I have placed my Excel file over here in Excel test input. Now it will ask me for insertion points, so I'll add an insertion point over here. And as you can see, it created a cross section of our excavation. Now the next step is to add our final command. And the way this works is what we'll do is in our AutoCAD environment, we'll have, let's say some circles, we'll have some polylines. What it will do, it will go over each of those entities, it will get their information, and then it will create a report on Excel. So let's add this command. Copy and paste. Now let's test our function. So the first thing we need to do again is load our application. Now I will add to this drawing some circles and some polylines. Let's add a polyline like this. And maybe we'll add also a closed polyline. Okay, now let's run our command, generate CAD report. And the next thing we will do is save it in this directory. Save. Now let's take a look at what we have, CAD report. So as you can see, for polylines, it added some data. It added the handle, the length, whether it's closed. If it's closed, it added an area. Also for circles, it added the CAD ID, the radius, the area, and the center point. Now the way this can be used is to generate reports about your CAD drawings, and eventually you can use this, let's say for cost estimates. You prepare a certain design, and then by getting all of the information from your CAD environment, you can maybe project the cost of the design that you're building. Again, if you have any comments, any questions, please put them in the comments below. And again, thank you very much for watching.